So my talk today is about performance optimization, and is it about being brave? So what is an optimally performing clinician? What makes them tick? And how, if we understand what makes them tick, and we begin to understand what makes us tick, can we become more like that optimally performing clinician? I've been teaching on performance optimization for a while now. And if you think you're in the room to learn about square breathing or visualization techniques, or if there's going to be a surprise simulation, you're in the wrong room. That's not what today is about. Today is about a journey to look at the people around us, look outward, and then to look inward at what makes us tick. And you're going to learn a bit more about me then, and maybe something to take back to your own workplaces. So let's start by looking outward. So what I'm going to get you to do is take out either a pen and paper, papyrus and a quill, or your phone. And I'm going to get you to take 1 minute, and I want you to ask yourself a few questions. Where I work, or where I used to work, it might be somewhere you used to work, what is an optimally performing clinician? What do they look like? But also, what do they sound like? And when they're on your team, or when you're observing them working in somebody else's team, how do they make you feel? So just for a little while, just think about that and write down some themes or words that come into your head. So what do they look like? When you think about that person who's inspired you in the past, how are they looking? How are they moving? What do they sound like? And maybe the sound is very minimal. Maybe a lot of their stuff is nonverbal. Or maybe it's how they communicate in a resource. And how do they make you feel? And how do you think their patients feel? So you have this looking outward, you can think about this optimally performing clinician in all of these ways. But how do they do what they do? What makes them tick? And this is where we're going to go off in a different direction with performance optimization. Because could the answer lie with their core values? And I want to take this opportunity to thank someone in the audience, Dr. Charlie Greentree, who's been inspiring in this space for me, especially over the last 6 months, to give me the courage to come up on stage and talk about this, which I will openly acknowledge I haven't addressed before to an audience like this in the PO space. Okay, so there might be some of you in the audience that are like, I did think I was here for a surprise simulation. And actually, Una's talking about core values. This is very disappointing, because aren't core values this nebulous thing? Don't they live on a banner on the screensaver at work? And do you know what? I don't even actually know what half the words mean on that banner. Isn't it something exec does and tells us to do that feel completely disconnected with me as a clinician? But never fear. I am but a simple emergency physician, just the 2 brain cells that work really hard all the time. And I'm more likely for our website to write the how-to guide than something clever like Shahina or Bard of RAP-EM. So we're going to keep this simple. And the other thing I want to acknowledge at the beginning now, before we dive into this, is we're dipping our toes into this. You could do a whole day on core values, but I just want to start this conversation for you with yourself. I also know that there are coaches and a lot of people in the room who will have thought about this before, but I think we all need to come back at it now in a performance optimization space. So let's just go back to what core values are. They're our foundational, they're deeply held beliefs. They start forming in childhood, and despite the fact I'm going to simplify it to a point today, core values are really complicated. They frame and they filter how we experience life, But they're not good or bad, right or wrong, they just are. And they can be conscious for many of you in the room, but for someone like me, who thought I knew myself pretty well, they were very subconscious for me for a long time. Why do they matter? And I'm here today to talk about performance optimization. Well, they matter because they're what drives all of us. They drive the decisions we make, they drive the way we interact with our colleagues and our patients. And if we can identify with them, then they allow us to enrich our professional identity, how we identify within our roles, and as I said earlier, how we interact with our patients and our colleagues, and how we create a sense of team. This is a warning slide. Be warned. The next slide has a lot of words in it, and the most words you're ever going to see me put on a slide. But you're going to see it a few times, and that's also why you have your pen and paper. This is a list of what could be your core values. It's not exhaustive, you can add your own, but it's a place to start. Okay. But before we look inward, because that's a long list and pretty intimidating, we're going to look outward again. And look at someone I know. There's this surgeon that I know. You might know him too. He actually works in Brisbane. And he seems to bring the best, and this is him, and he seems to bring the best out of the people that are around him. And I was curious about how that happened, because the things I've noticed about this surgeon is that he seems to do some things for other people, sometimes typical, sometimes not. And I was wondering how he brought the best out in his team and how he optimally performed. And I asked him what his core values were. And he said one of them was generosity. Now, his generosity might be demonstrated in bringing 10 coffees to the pre-7 a.m. ward round. But this is about more than a coffee fund for him. What gives him value and meaning and creates his sense of team is that he spends a lot of time in theatre demystifying his surgical subspecialty, which is actually not operating on fingers. This is the irony of this picture. It's operating on other parts of the body. What can be complex and subspecialized surgery to his interns and medical students. His generosity for his time goes to the fact that he often has about 5 mentees on the go, trying to eke out that 1% that would help them get on a program, get their consultant job, or get a position that they're really after. Because that generosity to him is key to create his sense of team and belonging, and it's what drives him, and then subsequently drives his team. So we've looked outward, so you're going to have to do a bit of work now. We've talked about why core values are important, but we're going to dip our toes into what could be your core values. We're going to look inside your brain. So let's figure it out. For something that is quite complex, we're going to ask ourselves 4 questions, and we're going to go back to that list. Oops. What do I draw upon when I make an important decision? At work, we can keep going. I'm not sure what's going on. Okay. This is performance optimization in practice. This is the simulation, not really. So what are my deal breakers? What do I value most? And what gets my goat when it's not there? Now this is really tricky to do because the next slide I need are all the core values. So I'm just gonna see. Yeah, sure. Oh yeah, great, excellent. Well, I've been suggested to lead some square breathing. I'm happy to do it. I'm already focusing on my feet. So let's go there with the square breathing. We'll do that, no dramas. Okay, so we're going to do a different performance optimization technique, and that's square breathing. Square breathing is going to activate yours and my now parasympathetic nervous system. If you use it in the context of your work where you're having a stressful situation, it can help de-escalate you. It'll improve your cognition. It'll bring you to an ideal place in the stress performance curve. So we're going to do that now as a slightly ad-libbing part of this talk until my core values reappear, because I can't remember all of them. So I'm going to close my eyes. You can do it too. I like to put my feet flat in the ground. You might be very experienced at controlled breathing, or you might not be. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lead you through a few rounds of that. This might be something you could do after you answer the bat phone. It might be something you can do as you're walking quickly to a pediatric resuscitation. It might be something you can do before your fellowship examination, which is in a week or a month. And it might be something you can do before you need to break really, really bad news that will help you perform optimally in the next 5 minutes. So I'm just going to get you to breathe normally, and in, just normally, and out. And we're going to do square breathing for 4 seconds. I'll get you to breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4, and hold for 4, 2, 3, 4, and out for 4, 2, 3, 4, and hold for 4, 2, 3, 4. And my slides are back. That's nice, isn't it? Excellent. So let's get to where we were. Oops. Okay. So we talked about this. So I want you to take out that pen and paper, quill and papyrus, or your phone that you had before. And what we're going to do is really rapid fire, dipping our toe into what could be your core values. What are my deal breakers? What do I value most? And when I'm at my best, what am I doing? So before we do that, I just want to address 2 things. The first thing is, people might be thinking, you might be thinking, is this my work values or my home values? So we all have this terrible affliction. We're human beings before we're anything else. Before we're doctors or nurses, parents, sons or daughters, aunties or uncles. And I think it's just the values that are about who you are, whether you're at work or at home. The other thing is, keep an open mind. And the reason I love educating is someone opened my mind very much to this a month ago, because what they did was that they listed 2 core values that I thought were a very interesting juxtaposition: humility and ambition. And I thought, that's very interesting. And then I started thinking about, who do I know who I think could have these core values? And I don't know for sure because I haven't asked them all, but I think of some of the best PICU and ICU physicians I know. I know they have to be ambitious, but I know the best ones I see are humble too. Okay, let's figure it out. What do I draw upon when I make an important decision? What are my deal breakers? What do I value most? And we'll do it relatively promptly in case the slides disappear again. So, I'd like you to pick 10. Okay? So this is rapid fire core values. I want you to pick 10. I want you to write them down. If you're the kind of person that can make a list in your brain, that's fine. I can't. So I want you to write them down. This is based off Brene Brown's list that's on her core values themed blog, one of them. But there might be something on here that isn't. So we're going to, I normally bring actually I have a timer here now that's working, so I'll use this. Okay, so you're going to have about 60 seconds, and I'm just going to do some square breathing while you're doing that. And off you go, 10. It's tricky. And I'll just remind you, what's a deal breaker? When I'm at my best, what am I doing? What makes me tick? Okay, remember there's no good or bad, right or wrong, they just are. And sometimes things can exist side by side, which might seem, previously you might have thought, gosh, no, those 2 things could exist. Okay, so you have 10. I want you to reduce that to 5. Okay, so you're going to have 30 seconds to do that. It can be tricky. They all seem like such good ones. Okay, last bit of the puzzle. I want you to pick 2. Now, the 2 you picked today, if this is brand new to you, may weave in and out with the other three that you've had if you've never thought about it before over the next few days. And that's okay. If it's the first time you've thought about it, you might think, actually, these others hold better for me in a few days. That's okay. But for today, just right now, pick 2. Okay. So whether you've dipped your toe in or you've jumped headfirst into the swimming pool, thank you for coming along the journey to discover what could be your core values. And that's been a bit of looking inward for you. So we're going to talk now about what it's like once you've identified your own core values and how you operationalize them. And this often can feel like a battle of the head and the heart. When I was in Ben's talk, the person I was discussing it with said, I asked her, where do you hold your memories? And she said, I hold them in my head and my heart. And I thought that was a really nice way. And I said, I hold them in my gut too. But I like that because head and heart are not disconnected. And neither are they with this. So running along with the theme of good cartoons and kids' books that I know from yesterday's workshop that we gave, I've picked brave to share with you as one of my core values. And my hair kind of looks like Nerida's when it's out, and I talk funny. So really, we're very similar. I don't turn my mother into a bear, and I don't have 3 younger brothers, but still, there are similarities. And now the clicker has, oh, here we are. Okay. All right, I'm just, oh goodness. Okay, so what could brave look like? What could brave sound like? How could brave make my team feel? And how could brave make my patients feel? Now, I am one of those people touched with this terrible affliction of being human. So I have good days and bad days, and some days I might aim for this 5% of the time, and some days I might aim for it 95% of the time, and some days I hope to achieve it maybe 50% of the time. So, being brave, and that's the title of the talk. So you're going to get a look inside my brain now, and what I try and do with my core values. Being brave is taking your break. Why is it that we have this micro guilt, even if we understand that we need fuel, that we can't run on empty, that we understand the metacognition, that our brains need glucose to work? Why is it that we feel this micro guilt, even when we know all of this, when we take a break? And the reason you have to be brave to take a break is you have to lean into that brief, not very nice feeling, because ultimately it'll allow you to give better patient care and be a better team member and leader. Being brave is when I step up to put in my next neonatal cannula. I work in a mixed ED, we're on ambulance bypass, and the sickest kids we see walk in arms, mainly of parents who, through no fault of anyone's, don't speak English. They're the pediatric patients who are sick that I see. So putting in a neonatal cannula at the best of times is tricky, but I can fail putting them in. And being brave is stepping up after you've missed the last one. And the reason it's hard is because you might fail again. I'm just going to keep talking. Being brave is sitting your primaries and your fellowship exams. It is hard stuff. And just because everyone has to do them, it doesn't mean that I didn't need to be brave to step up and do them. And to anyone in the room that's doing them or about to sit them at the moment, you are brave. Even if it isn't one of your core values, I know that you are. Being brave is picking up the next patient with PV bleeding in pregnancy when you've just had, and I had, my 4th miscarriage. The reason you have to be brave is that stuff is really hard. But you know what it allows me to do? Is connect with my patient with compassion and connect with myself with maybe a bit more self-compassion. Because let me tell you this, if you haven't been on the other side as a patient, you will be there one day. Leaning into that is hard when you've had that illness yourself. I'm just trying to remember the next slide. Being brave is reaching out for help. It's hard when you're meant to be also. You've worked all this time to get this FACEM after your name and you're meant to know your business. But when I walk into work, some days I'm not on my A game, I'm on my Z game. And those days I have to be brave, and I have to say to my colleagues and to my nurse in charge, I'm a bit tired today. And being tired is a great phrase for anything from I did a late early to I'm really not feeling it today. I'm safe to be here, but can you have my back? Because what that says is that it's okay to say I need help. And maybe when somebody else on your team comes in on their Z game, that they can get the help they need from you too. So, I want you to think back to that clinician that you thought about looking outward again at the very beginning of this talk. And you worked out what they looked like and sounded like. And now I'd like you to think about what core values could drive that behavior. I'm going to ignore the slides now. What core value could drive that behavior? And when you go back and you work with them, what I'd like to challenge you to do is maybe to say to them, hey, this lady's talk, her slides kept breaking, but she told me to come and ask you what your core values might be. And she tried to be brave in her talk and keep going. And the other thing I want you to do is, I want you to go back. When you go back through the door of your hospital or your private practice or your rural and remote service, wherever you work, or into the chopper to go on the next shift for you. And I want you to think back on the list of values that you made today. And I want you to lean into them and let them drive you and help you be the team member, the leader, and the optimally performing clinician that I know that you are. Thanks very much.
That was amazing, thank you. We're just going to give the IT guys a few moments just to reset the system so they don't disappear again. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions in the audience for Una? I'm running.
Una, that was fabulous, thank you, and you were very brave and you're amazing. My question is a little bit, I'm not sure if you're maybe touching on it in this session, is a little bit about moral injury, in the sense that I read something about it that it's in relation to when we can't practice within our own values, particularly, at work we might be valuing, privacy and compassion and all those things, and then we're practicing corridor medicine, and so perhaps we can't always achieve the values that we want to achieve in the workplace. I'm just interested if maybe you're already talking about it.
Well, is this on? Yeah. Well, it happens that I know I've listened to Shaheena's talk that she's about to give, so she's actually going to partially, or if not, well, some of the answers anyway. So if you wouldn't mind, would you mind if we listen to Shaheena's talk first? Because I think a lot of the answers will become apparent quite eloquently through her talk.
Thanks for that. It was an excellent talk and well done for being brave and putting up with the disruptions there. Jane Munro, I just wanted to ask you, in terms of other parts of your life when you're very grounded in your values, because certainly for me, I found in 2016 going through this process that has transformed how I work and in my personal life. Do you feel that having gone through the process of identifying your values, it helps guide you in a lot of different decision making, both clinically and work-wise, and you can actually articulate it? Do you do that openly, or is it more of an internal process for you?
I think it's more of an internal process, but I understand myself more now. So when I feel myself making decisions now, and I'm feeling into that, whether it's at work or at home, but that's one of my core values. But I find my decision making now is far more succinct, and also I understand what I'm doing, and I think that does a number of things. It means I'm not wasting bandwidth on going, why am I making this decision? I don't really understand, so that allows me to think and make decisions about other things. But actually it's really helped me in my home life to understand how my brain works. And actually that surgeon is my husband. He's a max-fac surgeon. And it's funny because his generosity is something that I never really leaned into before. And it was when I was writing this talk, we had a really in-depth discussion about values at home. And I don't understand him much better. And it's really helped me with my colleagues as well, because I've started having these conversations as a consultant group. It's been really interesting. Yeah.
Una, I've got a similar question, I think. That, do we perform better when we know our values?
Yeah, we do, I think. I think, as I said in one of the opening slides, I think it allows us, I think as we spoke about yesterday in the workshop, it allows us to perform better as individuals because we understand, I think, our roles better, we understand our decision making better, we understand where we sit within our teams better. And also if the whole team understands that better, then based on all of the things we spoke about yesterday, we will definitely perform better. And based off some of the bandwidth stuff and the other performance optimization theory, it should definitely benefit both the individual, the team, and the organisation. Yeah.
Thanks for your talk. I'm Jackie, in Adelaide. I think understanding your own values, but also understanding that other people have different values, and there's not values aren't better than others, and I think that really helps when you're working in a team, because you can work on you can use those values for other people if they've got strengths in those. So I think it's a really useful exercise to do in the team you're working in as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's about finding that common language, though, is really important to speak about that, because it's a bit like resilience training. I think core values issues have got a bit of a bad rap, but I think they are valuable.
Thanks very much, Una.